What's going on, everyone? Today on Discover the Meeple, we're going to be learning how to play Pax Pamir 2nd Edition, published by Wehrlegig Games, designed by Cole Wehrle. In Pax Pamir, each player assumes the role of a 19th century Afghan leader attempting to forge a new state after the collapse of the Durrani Empire. This period is often called the Great Game because of the role it played with the Europeans who attempted to use Central Asia as a theater for their own rivalries. In this game, those empires are viewed strictly from the perspective of the Afghans who sought to manipulate the interloping foreigners for their own purposes. Pax Pamir is a tableau builder. Players will spend most of their time purchasing cards from the central market and then playing them into their court. Players playing cards adds units to the game's map and grants access to additional actions that can be taken to disrupt other players and influence the course of the game. To survive, players will organize into coalitions. In the game, these coalitions are identified chiefly by their sponsors. Both the Russians and the British represent European powers, and the third coalition, the Afghans, is backed by the nativist elements who want to end European involvement in the region. Throughout the game, the different coalitions will be evaluated when a special event card called a dominance check is resolved. If a coalition has a commanding lead during one of those checks, players loyal to the coalition will receive victory points based on their influence in that coalition. However, if Afghanistan remains fragmented during one of these checks, players instead will receive victory points based on their personal power base. This was laid out in the rule book. I thought did a great job of giving an overview. Now that we went over overview of the game, let's go ahead and go over setup. So, first thing you're going to do is you're going to go over here and create the deck that is going to be laid out in the market. So, you're going to look for the standard cards here. And then the other ones will be dominance cards and event cards, which is dominance cards are a type of event. You're going to be looking for these type of cards. You're going to create 6 different columns, and each column will have 5 of these cards plus the amount of players. So in this example, we're playing with 2 players. So each bottom column would have 7 cards. This second column will have 2 event cards, the standard ones. You notice they have the different colors, types on the top and bottom. These are the standard events. For the last 4 columns, in addition to the 1 standard event that each will have, each of these will have a red dominance check card. And during those different times, scoring would take place. So what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and build these decks. So starting with the one farthest to the right, you're going to shuffle that set of cards. Go ahead and place it down. Next set, let's shuffle those. Place those on top of the existing one, and then keep going down, making sure once you build this deck to not shuffle again. All right, so the deck's been built. Now you're going to lay out the cards in the map. So you're going to start with the left side, and you're going to lay them out and fill out each column first. So you notice filling up column 0, filling up column 1, so you don't go all the way across for each row. This is how you do it. And then the remaining cards, will form your draw pile. There's going to be additional cards that you don't use, so you just use based on what it asks for in the rules. At this point, we've created the market, and now players will collect their pieces. So each player will have a loyalty dial. They'll have a little board here with their different cylinders matching their color. You're going to go ahead and put all the cylinders. There should be 10 spaces to fill up. So you put all your cylinders there. And you're going to put your scoring cylinder. It has the little gold print at the top of the track. Each of these tokens, called ruling tokens, are going to be placed in their applicable spaces on the map. You see the shape here. There's a matching shape on the map, so make sure to place all those out. And then the starting type of area that we have right now, it starts in the political era, so I'm going to go ahead and place that there. That can change over time based on the cards that come out. So once that's done, you have the each player is going to get 4 rupees to start. You're going to lay out the different coalition blocks. So this represents the Russian, Afghan, British. And then at the last thing players will do is they will decide which starting loyalty they will choose. They'll do that face down, and then all at one time, go ahead and reveal it. Starting loyalty could be based on what cards they see out here. As you can see, there's a few cards out here that this is considered a patriot for the British. So if you see certain types of cards that suit a type of loyalty, it might be good to pick that particular one. But all that will be explained in the next set of videos. All right, on to gameplay. So, majority of the time, you're going to be purchasing cards from the market, and they go in your hand, and then you can play them into your court. You can take up to 2 actions on your turn, and then play passes to the next player. In this example, I have chosen the British, and player 2 has chosen Russia. Those are important when placing units on the mat, as we'll get into. That will dictate what different type of coalition blocks we'll be placing. So, to start, you would purchase a card from the market. If I wanted to purchase a card that's not in the 0 column, I would need to pay a coin for each card that I skip to get to the card that I am interested in. So if I wanted this card, I would pay 1 coin to each card that I'm not picking up to get to that. And I would pay the coin to the cards in that same row. If, for example, I had decided to take this card and put it in my hand, notice there's no card here, and I still wanted this card. Instead of placing a coin here in an empty spot, I would place it in the top card, and then continue to place coins on any card up to the card I'm choosing. Those coins would stay there until they were picked up, either by yourself in a future turn or another player. If I decided to take this card first, I could not later take a card that I placed a coin on that turn. So if you're looking to take one of these cards first, that's what we would recommend, and then later taking the card in the same row. notice on this card here, it has a different type here. This is the army type with 2 stars. So the strengths can vary between 1 and 3. This one has a strength of 2. And it also has different army units. Those army units that would be placed come from the same color as the loyalty of the player that played them. So in this case, I would go for the pink coalition blocks if I decided to play this card. And the place it would go is based on the location at the top. This down here represents what would happen if this card would later get assassinated. And over here represents the different actions that you can take from the card. You can decide to play those actions as one of your main actions if the current type is not red. If it is red, any actions on the card can be done as bonus actions, not taking the 2 actions that you have available for each turn. So I think for the first example, I'm going to go ahead and take this card into my hand that represents 1 action, and then I'm going to play it. So what's going to happen is I'm going to take 2 armies from the my current loyalty. I'm going to play the card into my court, and they're going to go on Punjab. You notice these different tokens. These can be gained if a player would place one of their cylinders on the board, and the pieces loyal to them were more than any other coalition. So in this example, if I was later able to place a tribe here, I could take this token. If player 2 had been able to play 3 blocks, either in the form of armies or roads, and I had 3 as well, I could not take this token. And if I later, if I had taken it at one point and then the player 2 had played those that now were even, I would have to put the token back. More into what benefits those play in a little bit, but just wanted to bring those up for example purposes now. So in this example, I placed 2 armies in Punjab, and that's the end of my turn. Play would pass. So during cleanup, the things you're going to look for is you're going to discard down to your court size. So at the start of the game, each player has 3 cards that they can have in their court. For every, let me see, I'm going to pull some from the cards we're not playing with. For every crown star that they have out on in their court, they can play an additional card into their court. So if this card was in my court, I would then be able to play 3, which is a standard amount, and then plus 2, so up to 5 cards in your court. That can be pretty strong. If I have more cards in my court than the size I'm allowed to, at that point, I would discard cards to make it so I had
the amount that I could have. If either I had or player 2 had put spies on there, those would go back to the player's supply as well. And I'll go over that as they come up. And then the next thing you'll check is hand size. So the standard hand size you can have at start is 2 cards in your hand plus the amount of blue cards you have in your court. So in this example, if I had been able to play this card into my court, I can now have 2, which is a standard, plus 2, because this card had 2 stars. If I don't, if I have more cards in my hand than I'm allowed to, I would then discard the cards to allow for what I'm able to hold. If any cards, like for example, this card, which is an event, if an event had been on the end here, at this point, the event is carried out in the if discarded section. So this says all ignore all bribes until the next dominance check. So we showed what the dominance cards look like. So for, until the next dominance check, we would ignore all bribes. I'll explain what that means, but if someone had decided to purchase it, this other ability would have occurred until the next dominance check. So you may choose to not pay bribes until the next dominance check. Bribes come in the format of coins. So that's a nice way of not having, being able to conserve your coins. Okay, and then last thing you do is you're going to go ahead and slide the cards down the market. And fill them up. You would focus again on the columns and then play them out like we did during setup. Okay, let's go on to player 2's turn. Okay, so player 2 will go ahead and take this card. It is one on Kabul, and allows you to place 2 spies on any card in somebody's court that is in the Kabul location. So let's go ahead and carry those 2 things out first. What that would mean is these 2 cylinders will go on this card because no other card has been played from Kabul. Additionally, you'll add an army to Kabul, and you'll switch the current type to the warfare swords. So let's go ahead and add the 1 army from the card. Onto Kabul. Armies again are standing up. The 2 spies will go on the card, and we change the loyalty to here. Now, for future purchase actions in the middle, if you wanted to take a card outside the 0, you would have to pay double the amount of coins per card. So if that had been played, and then I had wanted to take this card during my turn, I'd have to pay 2 coins to that card in order to take this one. And if I wanted this one, I'd play 2 and 2. So that can definitely make things expensive quickly. Okay, that player has taken 2 actions. They picked up the card, and then they played it. Okay, So this card came up. This card represents a patriot. So at different times during the scoring, if scoring came down to the influence, this would count for 1 influence. And I would be able to play this card, since I am the British, without having to change my loyalty. Because you notice this is a British patriot. So if player 2 had picked it up and played it, they would then have to change their loyalty to the British, because now they're playing a patriot that is British. If they had any other patriots that had the yellow border here, at that point they would have to discard those, in addition to any prizes that they built up. These prizes can happen as different actions on your cards, and add influence to your the coalition that you support. So we're going to go ahead and put this back here. Okay. So I think what I will do is I'm going to go ahead and try to pick up this card here. So I have to pay 2 coins because we're currently in the warfare section. And then, so I have this in my hand. And so this is a little different little prize section down here. So once this is played, I could play this card for its action, even if the current type was not here. The current type was in the grain section. At that point, I could play this as a free action. So, looking at what's here, I'm going to go ahead and play this. So I play the units into Kandahar, and I will place 2 roads. That's what the little camel represents. So I'm going to go ahead and take 2 coalition blocks, and you're going to place them in Kandahar, and you can place them in different regions that border Kandahar. We also have this thing come up. This means the card is leveraged. So I will get 2 coins from the bank. If later I would lose this card, I would have to get rid of 2 coins. And for every coin I could not get rid of, if I was low, I would have to get rid of cards from my court or from my hand. If I still couldn't do it, you would just not pay back the rest. So decided to also play this card. I played the roads. I got the 2 coins, and now I will change it to the blue intelligence section. Notice the blue symbol there. So those are my 2 actions. When I'm playing cards into my court, I need to play them on the left or the right of my existing court. So now we can check during cleanup. My court size, I currently have 2, so I'm still good. My hand size, I have no cards in my hand. And then there's no events in the leftmost column. So now we go ahead and slide all columns down. At this point, it is player 2's turn. Now, player 2, you notice, has a intelligence card. So now they have access to either one of these abilities for a free action. They cannot decide to play both abilities. They can only choose one per card that they have. But what this means is they can move either spies or armies up to 2 spaces. You can split those movements between multiple pieces, or have them all done by 1 unit. Additionally, you could attack either spies on players' tableaus or pieces on the board. But you would have to attack one specific card or region, and you could only remove the amount of pieces based on the armies that you have. So if there were, for example purposes, if blue had 2 spies on the card, and red had 2 spies, then red could use this card to remove my 2 spies, because it's from one location, and those would go back here, and red would continue to have their spies there. I think for these purposes, we're going to go ahead and move these spies to the player 1's cards. When I explained that player 2 could also move their units on the board, they can only move their units if a road of their coalition type is out on the board. So if, for example, I had placed my road there instead, player 2 could not use my road, the British road, to move their Russian piece. It has to be a Russian piece, Russian road, to move a Russian army. Additionally, if I had decided to place the British road here, player 2 could have played this action on the card to attack my road here up to the amount of armies that are on that space based on the card ability and the armies. So they can do up to 2 pieces. In this case, they only have 1, so they would have been able to remove this road. Okay, so that was player 2's free action. And now I think they're going to take up this card and this card, because they like rubies. So also have an opportunity to introduce different card abilities. You can see your tribes in Kabul cannot be attacked. So if later player 2 had placed a tribe, which these cylinders represent, in Kabul, I, as player 1, would not be able to attack them with any armies that were able to get there, either by placing cards or by moving. I wouldn't be able to attack as long as this card is in play. If this card gets discarded for some reason, at that point, this ability would no longer be active. So player 2 took both of those cards as their 2 actions. That is their 2 actions. So go over the cleanup. Court size, they're good. Hand size, regularly they could only have 2 cards, which they currently have, but they've also played this in intelligence level 2 cards, so they can have up to 4 cards in their hand. Any events that were in this far left section are discarded, and the event is played out. And then you slide every card down. So this card came up. So this is the first dominance check card that would occur. So player 1 has an opportunity to take this event, which says you may choose to not pay bribes until the next dominance check. So I think player 1 is going to play that, so they don't have to pay any bribes. And I believe, yeah. So what bribes represent, you notice these different cards here. Or, yeah, these different cards have the player 2's spies on there. If I wanted to use the actions of those cards, you notice on this one, it has to attack, or you could buy prizes. If I want to do either one of those card actions, I would have to pay a coin to player 2 for every spy that is on that card, assuming that that player has more spies on the card than I do. Now, in this example, we both have 1 spy, so player 2 does not have more spies than me, so I could continue to take out these actions if I wanted. But if in this right now, player 2 has 1 has more spies on there than me, which having 0. So this card here, you may choose to not pay bribes until the next dominance check. I would not have to pay player 2 to use that action. Okay, so that was my first action. It would be nice to be able to pick up these political cards because that allows me to have a higher court. But right now, those it's all the way in the end, and I have to pay a coin for each one. So I think I'm going to take this card into my hand and that would be my second action. So I'm currently okay. Slide down.
Alrighty, so I went ahead and skipped a few turns. So a few other different game elements I want to explain. So I had mentioned the bribing for playing the different actions that are on the cards. Additionally, a bribe can happen if a player that wants to play a card from a region that another player rules. So you can see here, player 1 currently rules Herat, and they have the ruling token here. So if player 2 wanted to play a Herat card, they would have to pay a bribe to player 1, the one that rules there, one coin per tribes that are at that location. Player 1 could decide to make player 2 pay less, but that would be up to them. And remember, in this case, this event here, this is also a way for that event to be helpful. So that's one of the items. Just the idea of placing the tribe. It has that little option there, and then when you place the tribe, if you have the most pieces in that region, you take the ruling token, and then, like I said before, if that changes later, you put the ruling token back. I wanted to clarify earlier, I had said that these were prizes. They're actually considered gifts. They serve the same purpose during dominance checks with counting influence, but for game terms, they're considered gifts. How a prize could occur is, you notice here, this card, there is a blue piece, a blue spy on there, and there are 2 red spies. In this case, red has equal to or more spies than blue on here, so they would still have access to these different card actions, red would. But if blue wanted to, they could play the betray action that they have on one of their cards. And you notice we're in the political phase section. So they could play this as a free action. And then this card would get assassinated. They have to pay 2 coins, and they pay the coins to the board, starting with the rightmost. You put 1 coin on each, and then going to the left. So they pay two coins, and then this card is assassinated. You notice on the other side, there's a little British symbol here. At this point, the player that did the assassination could decide to count this as a prize, so they would put it under their loyalty dial. If there are of that type, then this would count as 1 influence for the dominance check. If they weren't at the type, so let's say that player 2 decided to assassinate this, they could decide to keep the prize, but then they would have to change loyalty to the British, discard any gifts that they had, discard any loyalty patriots that they had. So yeah. But in this case, player 1 did the assassination, so they gain the prize. This card here has another card action, the build action. So what this allows the player to do is they can place pieces of their coalition type to the board in any place that they currently rule. So In this case, blue rules Herat, so they could place up to 3 pieces in Herat. They could place 3 armies, or 3 roads, or a combination of the two. And each piece that they played would cost 2 coin, and they would place those coins out in the market. Additionally, there is a card here that is taxing. So you notice this is a level 2, so it has ability to get up to 2 coins. So if player 2 decided to play that, they could require if I had a Kabul card, I currently do not, but if I had played a Kabul card, they could tax me, and so they would take a coin from me, up to the amount of coins that are here, so up to 2, unless I had these grain cards played. What the grain represent is I can be protected from up to that many coins. So if I just had this one out, I would be able to save at least one of my coins. But since I have both of these out, and you notice this one has a 2 stars, and this one has 1, I could save up to 3 coins. So currently I have 2 coins, so these coins would be protected. Player 2 could take the coins from the market, though, and it wouldn't have to be of that region. So when you rule a region, it allows you to execute the build. It allows you to execute taxing, because you can only tax if you rule that region. And then also allows you to extract bribes, like if I wanted to play a Kabul card, because player 2 owns a Kabul card, I would have to pay them based on the amount of tribes that they have out on the board. At this point, I think it would be a good time to go over how scoring would work. So let's say that for my last action, player 1 decided to take this card. I'm doing this for demonstration purposes. It's not strategic in this circumstance. But what happens is you resolve a dominance check. If successful, clear blocks from the map. So what you look at for a dominance check is you count the amount of these different blocks that are on the board, and if one coalition has more than 4 or more than another independently, so if there were 3 Afghan blocks and 3 Russian blocks, you wouldn't combine those two. So it's 4 or more than each individual coalition. So in this case, there are 4 British blocks and 1 Russian. That's not 4 or more than Russia. So it passes to the next level of checks. So during an unsuccessful dominance check, at that point you count the amount of cylinders that players have on their board, and whoever has the most cylinders will get a certain amount of points. So in this case, this player 2 has played 5 cylinders, and player 1 has only played 2. So player 2 will score 3 points, and player 1 that got second place would score 1 point. If there was a tie, then you would add up those tied points and divide by 2. But in this case, red would have gotten the most points in this example. If the British would have had one more, then they would have successfully gotten a dominance check. And whoever has the most influence in that coalition, which in this case only player 1 has any kind of stake in the British, the one with the most would get 5 points. So in this case, blue would get 5 points, and red, player 2, would get 0. Whenever a player at the end of a dominance check has 4 or more points than the other players, game ends and that player wins. So in this case, player 1, blue, would actually win pretty early in the game. Let's say that player 2 realized, and this has happened a lot with me or Natalie when we've been playing, player 2 realizes that the British are kind of taking over the map here, and it's not worth trying to fight back with the Russian blocks. So they decide to change loyalties. Again, this can be done by playing a Patriot card. So this is an example. So if they played a Patriot card of that type that they want to change to, by assassinating either their own card or the other players and gaining the prize, they can choose to accept this. They don't have to, but if they choose to accept it, that's a way of changing loyalties. And then they would be able to, the scoring would happen a little bit different. So in this last example, both player 1 and player 2 both have the same loyalty with British. So at that point, you would count the amount of influence that each player has. So in this example, both players have 1 influence. So they could start with 1 influence. If player 1 would have additionally kind of saw that this was coming up and bought more gifts, then you can, this would also count for an influence for each gift. Gifts can be bought during card actions with cards that have that symbol on it, and the cost is based on what's on the dial. You can only buy 1 per gift action, or from the prizes, as I explained, if this would be assassinated. Those also count for influence for that player. And in that case, again, if there's a tie, then you split the points. In this situation right here, player 1 has 2 influence in the British, and player 2 has 1 influence. So player 1 would score 5 points, and player 2 would score 3 points. If at some point in the game, 2 dominance cards, so those are the red ones, 2 dominance cards are in the tableau, they're immediately removed and a dominance check is carried out, and then the cards are refilled. One other thing, if a dominance was successful, so if there was 4 or more, then all of the blocks are removed for the next round. So all the pink ones and yellow ones in this case would be removed. So you keep playing until someone has scored 4 or more than all the other players, or until the final dominance check. And knowing there are 4 of these cards. On the final dominance check, points are doubled. So if it was a tie in that example, let's say like this where we're both 1-1, you would add both of those up, times it by 2. So 5 and 3, 8 times 2, 16, divide by 2, 8. So each player would get 8 points. If at the end of the game scores are tied, then whoever has the most of the army card stars would win the game. If there's still a tie, it's whoever has the most coins. And that's it. One other thing that's important is there is a rule called the Overthrow Rule. So if for any reason player 1 would have to get rid of this card here, which is their only political card for Herat, they would have to remove all their tribes from Herat. Likewise, if the tribe in Herat was removed, they would have to remove all their political cards that are associated with Herat. This can be definitely an important thing to remember, and can really affect the gameplay, so it's something to keep in mind. If a political card had one of these symbols on here, then the player would also have to pay back those amount of coins.